Creativity Podcast. I'm your host, Mari Reesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Robin Landa, professor, writer, and award-winning designer. Please enjoy Robin Landa. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. Today I am here with Robin Landa, professor, writer, and designer. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Mara. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here with you.
Oh, I'm so excited that you are here, and I can't wait to talk to you about creativity. You are someone who I really admire in the world of creativity, and I can't wait to hear all of the pieces you have to share with us. So thank you for saying yes and joining me.
I'm thrilled. Thank you.
Well, before we dive into our creativity conversations, why don't you take a couple of moments and let our listeners know a little bit about who you are and what you do.
I hold the title of Distinguished Professor in the Michael Graves College of Kean University, which is a large public university in the state of New Jersey. And I'm the author of 25 books, 24 of which are nonfiction. One is a children's book. And I continue to write, and I'm a designer and a consultant to corporations about creativity and idea generation.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And I love that you're working with corporations around creativity. I think it's so important, and such a corporations want the creativity, and they, in my experience, want people to just have it, and the investment in how to bring creativity to a corporation or organization is some disconnection, but it sounds like you're able to crack that and help them in crafting or creating the space for more creative generating.
I think you make an excellent point that many employers expect people to be naturally creative, right? And they just throw you in there without training, and a lot of advanced degrees don't have any modules on creative thinking or imagination building skills. And so people are kind of just thrown in the water without knowing what to do. And it's really unfortunate, because what propels us in this country is innovation and creative thinking. And so you can't just leave it to a few people. I think more people should become involved.
I absolutely agree and think it's so important. I'm really interested with, the experience that you've had working with corporations and working in the higher education system. Where do you think more attention needs to be focused on creative thinking, on developing creative solutions? Where's the gap that needs filling?
I love the word gap, as you'll find out when we keep speaking. I think in both places, I really do. I think also in many undergraduate programs, unless they're specifically creative programs, such as a creative writing degree or filmmaking, or what I teach, art direction or design, creativity isn't a part of the curriculum. And it's unfortunate. And I think we spend so much time in undergraduate school trying to get people to communicate clearly. So if they're taking an English course, they're learning to write clearly and with pith, as opposed to using their imagination or any kind of creative skills. And so it's a battle. How many courses can you take? But it's such a critical element, whether it's engineering or biomedical research, or anything where you need to make a leap of thinking, where it's not pedestrian thinking. And then in business, these same people are going on without having had any training unless they pursue it on their own. Or some people have multi-talent. So somebody could be an engineer and also a musician. So they're maybe pulling from their musician side into the engineering side. And so I think you're right. I think both are missing. They both have gaps, and there are voids to fill there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you're here to do some of that and help people in both arenas. I'm so curious, what does it mean to you to be creative?
I think creative is usually, the way I see it, and another educator, John Seeley Brown, sees it as a twist on something that exists. It modifies something that exists. Whereas imagination is new. It's creating something out of nothing. It's sort of like, if you think about Harry Potter, that world was built out of Rowling's imagination, right?
Mhm.
So when you think about anything that's new, where there's world building, that's imaginative. Creative is kind of a twist on something, and most of us can do that, I think. It's just a matter of knowing how to do the twist.
Right. I love that word twist, because I think inherently the word twist feels creative to me. We're turning something on its head, or looking at it from a different angle, or experiencing it through a different lens. So I really appreciate that term. It's something maybe I'll use moving forward in how I describe creativity. But when, in terms of like what it means to be creative, your experience of being creative, how did you get involved in the world of creativity?
Well, I've always been an artist from a young age. I started designing my own fashions at the age of 7, according to my mother. And my paternal grandfather, who was in the dress manufacturing business, didn't believe that they were my designs. He thought I had copied them, but I had created them. And in fact, I was busy cutting up everybody's clothes at home to create the fashions for Barbie. So, so I was always in that headspace, in that world. And when I went to college, I pursued it. I pursued a visual arts degree and then kept going. And my interests are multi-pronged, as many creative professionals are. So I'm interested in the visual arts, in writing, in dance, in film, in screenwriting. So my interests are multifaceted.
Nice. I think I definitely find that in people who consider themselves to be creative, they're multifaceted. They're picking up projects in several different arenas, not only in the one that maybe they're trained in, but they're flexing creativity in other areas as well. I too do that. So I think that's fantastic. And I think it's how we keep our creative, zest alive, by engaging in all of these creative pursuits. What are some of the things that you do to keep your own creative cup filled?
I dance. I dance almost every day, unless I'm teaching, and then I don't have time. But I dance pretty much every day. I take dance classes and jazz classes, and that really keeps me sane.
Yeah.
That's really great for my mental health. I read a lot of great writing. I watch really good films. I go to the theater, and all of that feeds my thinking, because what I do a lot is reverse engineer. So if
Mm,
I'm reading a really terrific novel or watching a great play, I think, how did this person conceive this idea, and how did they structure it? So I'm not just there for enjoyment, but to learn. And that really does get my juices flowing. And I think, oh my gosh, that's so brilliant. Can I write a sentence like that? Can I structure a thought like that? It's
yeah.
not a matter of imitating, but it's a matter of understanding how people think.
Yeah. And then kind of that translation of how could I use a similar experience or thought pattern, or
Yes. Yeah.
yeah. No, I
Yeah.
love it. I think there's something to be said. I think sometimes people get bogged down with being creative means I have to be involved in a creative art expression. But what I hear you saying is by immersing yourself in that creative space, that can bring you just as much creative juice, so to speak, as if you were actually in the performance.
I think so. And in fact, when I take dance classes and I take them with really top dance teachers, I also deconstruct how they're teaching. And so that I can take their methodology into my classroom as well. So I think, the world is a classroom, and to always think about it. When I co-facilitate a writing fellowship. And in that fellowship, Maggie Taft runs the articles group of people who want to learn to write journal or academic articles. And one of the things she does is give out a really well-written article, and everybody learns to reverse engineer the structure of this well-conceived and well-written article. So reverse engineering is really useful.
Nice. For listeners who may not know what reverse engineering is, would you mind sharing just a little bit about it?
Sure. You're really looking at how the person structured something and going back into it to try to understand it. It's simpler than what it sounds like. It's just you're really just trying to figure out the structure of how somebody constructed the form, whether it's a piece of writing or it's a piece of music. So if you listen to a pop song, you can listen for the chunks. How did they chunk the music? Because it is in chunks, right? It just the way website design is in chunks, so we get bits of information. And so you're just really trying to figure out how somebody else structured something.
And then putting your own content into that structure.
For an article, sure, because that really does have a definite format. But if it's, the way somebody structured a play, that too might have a particular format. But you really just, I think, do it mostly for learning, for seeing how somebody else was thinking. And then you're looking at you're trying to figure out their skeletal, structure.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of people do that without actually recognizing they're doing it when they're watching something or paying attention to it or hearing it. So that makes a lot of sense.
In fact, if you study painting in an undergraduate program, or not graduate, but undergraduate program, often professors will have you reproduce a Cezanne or reproduce a Caravaggio or reproduce whatever they're trying, whichever method they're trying to teach you. And while you're doing that, you're not only learning a technique, but you're learning how the artist structured the composition.
Yeah. I love it. I love the creativity that goes into it and the creativity that can come out of it. I think that's so important. And now, being in the world and field of creativity, I imagine you come up against challenges, creative challenges, or what people call blocks or roadblocks or something. What are some of your own blocks that you have experienced, and then how do you navigate through them?
I think what a lot of people don't realize about blocks is that you get unblocked by doing work. And so I think, I think it's part of the myths of creativity. Like you said, people expect people just to be organically creative. And some people are, but most people are not. And so it takes sweat, it takes work. And one thing to do is to do research, which you have to do for any project. So if you feel you're blocked, going back into your research to really look to see what did you miss, what more can you learn. You can also do lots of other things, like as you just asked me about, I'll go read a book, or I'll go take a walk, or I'll take a dance class. So I'm not concentrating on creating something in the moment. I'm letting what I understand, my research, incubate, and allowing my subconscious or unconscious, whatever you want to call it, mind work on the problem. That helps. And certainly walking and talking about it helps. So you have a friend who's willing to listen but not particularly contribute, but let you talk about the problem, or you can actually do that with your phone and just voice record to your phone and hear yourself explain the issue. Then there are other things like you could ask questions like, what if? What if is a fantastic creativity prompt. A lot of science fiction writers use that. You know, what if I could clone myself? What if I were invisible? What if I could fly? What if I could create an object that would allow me to communicate to you digitally? You know, so when you watch science fiction films, you're pretty sure that that person was saying, well, what if we could beam ourselves, right? Neil Gaiman, the great writer, on his blog said that when he visited a children's class, they asked him, how do you get your ideas? And at first he said, well, I don't know. And then they pushed him and he thought, okay, I have to answer because they're children. And he said, I ask what if questions. What if my cat could talk? What if my cat could love another person? What if? And so what if is a really key question.
Yeah. I love that tool as an opportunity to kind of push through or get over a hump or a challenge. And it's something I think many times people get really overwhelmed. Like, I'm never going to be able to get through this myself. I need to have a bunch of other people. But the what if question, you could ask it to yourself, you could ask it of someone else and see what they had to say. And that might spark something too. So
it's a great dinner table question. I'm sorry. It's like, you know, if you have your whole family around, you go around the table and just say whatever comes to mind. It doesn't have to be brilliant, you know, or insightful. The other thing to do is to think the way Mark Twain, Einstein, and Steve Jobs thought, which is combinatorial thinking, where you take two different things and combine them. So let's say I was going to do something to promote the French Tennis Open. I might take a croissant and create it in the material of a tennis ball, right? So you take two different things and you merge them or you combine them and you get a whole new thing. And that's kind of an interesting and fun way to think about it. And a lot of great thinkers use that.
Yeah. What is it called again?
Combinatorial thinking.
Combinatorial, yeah.
Or Kessler, the psychologist, called it bisociation. So bi meaning two and associating, but he said that it had to be from two different domains. So to combine two different domains, whereas I was talking about two objects, so that's not two different domains, but I guess it's food and sports object. Yeah.
Sure, it could. You could get there, right?
You could get there.
It reminds me of there's that world's worst idea also of coming up.
Yes, that I'm so glad you said that, because thinking of the wrong answer.
Yeah.
Thinking of like what's the worst, and in fact I help clients with this when, let's say, we're talking about a food delivery service. What could we do to make our patrons angry? Right?
Great question.
Yeah. What could we do to annoy them? And you keep asking questions like that. What should we do wrong to find out what we should do right?
Those are great reminders and tips and tools when we get stuck with creative experience or creative projects and needing to find solutions or find answers to them.
Right.
Yeah. In working with all of the students and professionals you do, how do you attend to people who come in saying, I don't have a creative bone in my body?
I really tell them to not use any negative self-talk. Negative self-talk does not do anybody any good in any arena, any area of their life. It's really not productive. And you really want to be productive and proactive. So as best as we can cut that out, that's helpful. And I've taught literally thousands of people, I mean, literally thousands of people to tap into their creative potential. And, you know, as children, most people are creative. And then, you know, 7 years later, something has happened where life has made them more literal, or the world has just oppressed them, or just everything that's going on. So it's easy to go back, that you'll hear a lot of people say that being playful and finding the child within is helpful. But I will tell you that people who are creative professionals do engage in negative self-talk, but they also engage in I'm a genius, and it goes it can
Both
go
ends of
either
the
way
spectrum.
within an hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the best thing I've ever done, this is the worst thing I've ever, and that's part of the personality. So it's hard to eliminate it entirely, but
Yeah.
if you try to tell yourself that it's not helpful, and it's really not.
Right. What are your thoughts? Oftentimes, when I'm talking to people, they'll talk about kind of like the shadow side of creativity or creative expression that may not be seen as super positive. I had someone, when I asked them their earliest memory of being creative, they said, well, I was a really good liar when I was a kid. And I'm really curious kind of where that falls in for you in the creativity field and work that you do.
I think for me, and for a lot of the people I've taught, there's an obsession, and that's the
Mm.
shadow side, that we're obsessive people, and we
Mhm.
keep thinking about something. There's a really old book. I think the author's name is Carrie, and it's called The Horse's Mouth, and it's about a painter. And when he comes into the room, the first thing he does is use his lighter to look at the painting he's been working on before he takes off his coat, before he does anything else. And it's that kind of obsession with what you're working on
Mm.
that can kind of either eat at you,
Right.
right, or it can help you. And so there's always, as you say, there's this dual edge. And the other dual edge, and I tell this to my daughter and all my students, is that when you're very, very creative, you're also very, very perceptive. And so you're very, very sensitive. You see things in the world that other people might not see. And it hurts. It's pain. Creativity is painful.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. I think many times people think it's all sunshine and rainbows, but there is that challenge and what many people feel a darkness, and I think that may be where that starving or tortured artist myth kind of comes from or started.
Well, logic is clear, right? When
Right.
you do math, or you figure out a problem using logic, but creativity is uncertain, and it's a very different process. That's an uncertain process and a messy process, and you're not going to get from A to B really clearly, and there are going to be like a million ways you could get from A to B, and some of them might work and some of them might not work, and you might never get to B. So it's a very messy process that some people find very uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. I I think being comfortable in the mess and uncertainty, oftentimes we can forget how uncomfortable it is for other people
Yes,
who don't live in that space.
yes, yes. And you have to become comfortable with it, and it takes time. But
Yeah.
there you have to not be fearful of uncertainty.
Yeah. What are some ways that you have used to help yourself lessen fear of uncertainty?
I just tell myself that you're going to figure it out, and I do. And and sometimes I just have to rely on my ability to do it. And it comes with, it comes with experience, it comes with age.
Sure.
And for some people, I have some students who are fearless.
Yeah.
It's personality driven too, but I've learned to rely on my knowledge and expertise and experience, and not start to freak out. Uh, but it does take time for some, and for others, it's, the people who just will jump out of a plane, and other people won't jump, right? A lot
Right.
of it A lot of it is personality.
Yeah, I also hear that like there's a lot of trust and self-trust of like you have the knowledge, you've done the research, and now you're gonna just put it out there or take the next steps. How do you think people can develop trust within themselves to trust their creative side?
I think it that's a really interesting question. And somebody recently asked me, like, what do I think about working on instinct? And it's
Mhm.
similar because there's no, if you're a parent, there's hardwired instinct,
Right.
but otherwise it's work and and it's experience. And for me, there's no instinct unless I've done it sometimes. So when I wrote my first book, I had absolutely no instinct because I had nothing. I had nothing, and it's like if I had had a second child, I would have known a lot of things to do. And then you have better instinct. So I think it comes with experience.
Yeah. That's fascinating, the experience to the trust. And I'm curious, you know, being in the creative space, what are your thoughts on the importance of safety for creativity?
You mean a safe space to work in?
Safe space, yeah, just that concept of feeling safe enough to take a risk.
Yeah, well, I think that's important. And I make sure my classroom is a very safe space. If people feel comfortable, we never say something like, I like it or I don't like it. We say, perhaps if that were yellow instead of red, it would signal this in the viewer rather than that. So we try to use constructive language to speak about work. But I think that it's important for people to not always tell other people what they're doing, and because you might get shut down. I'm forgetting her name right now. Maybe you remember it. The creator of Spanx
Oh, I don't remember her name, but I do know who you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah. And when she had the idea, she didn't tell people about it because she didn't want people to say, oh, that's ridiculous, or you won't be able to manage, or she didn't want anybody else shutting her down. And so you can create your own safe space by being guarded in some ways, unless it's a very trusted
Yeah.
person, or somebody won't do that. So I can talk about my ideas to certain colleagues who I know will be encouraging and actually help me maybe clarify it. But I'm very careful about who I confide in terms of when I'm creating.
Yeah. I agree with that. And I think it's important for everyone, creatives and others, to have those people in your life that you can really trust and feel safe enough to share an idea. But I also think it's important to have those people who are willing to challenge the idea, to support it in maybe a little discomfort fashion. Like,
with dialogue, but not, and
yeah,
not with dialogue, but not debate, and not to shut somebody down by saying you can't do that, or that'll never happen, or you're wasting your money, or that's no good. But a discussion, a dialogue is good.
yeah, absolutely. Well, our discussion, I have loved chatting with you. I just have one last question.
Sure.
What does it feel like in your body to be creative?
Ooh, no one's ever asked me that before. Very interesting. Um, I would say that it's a kind of a high. Endorphins flow, and that's why I write as much as I do, and design as much as I do, and dance as much as I do, because it's a natural high.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for sharing
You're
that.
welcome.
And oh my goodness. Well, if people want to learn more about the work you do, the books you've written, how could they go about finding that information?
Thank you for asking. My website, robinlanda.com, has pretty much all of my books and information about me.
Wonderful. Well, I will put that in show notes so people have easy access. And thank you so much for chatting this evening. It has been a pure pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Same here. Thank you so much.
listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.